My name is Hendrix. I am the executive director at Video Pool Media Arts Center, which is just upstairs. I'm also I guess a co-lead in another duo called Manufacturing Entertainment. And we're going to talk about magic today. And I'm pretty excited because I know all of these folks here on stage and I've seen all of their artwork, and it's I'm pretty thrilled to be on stage with them, and I'm pretty thrilled to be able to share that with all of you. I'm gonna I guess I'm gonna maybe this probably happened this morning, but I'm gonna start with I just want to do a land acknowledgement. I just want to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory. It's the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and it's the homeland of the Métis Nation. And also just to acknowledge that the clean water that we have access to comes from Shoal Lake First Nation. And I also, I had a really great exchange recently with a friend of mine out in Ontario. And in this sort of long discussion that we were having, something sort of stood out to me, which he said, knowledge is fine, but without action, something sours. And it really stuck with me, and I just it makes me think about the land acknowledgements. They are important, but so is action. And I just want to point that out and sort of hope that we can all keep moving forward with it. Thank you. And then I'm going to, I don't know, I think maybe instead of going through everybody, and reading through like all those bios, I'm going to do them one at a time, like as you presenting your work. So before each person, that way, it kind of like sticks with me. By the time I read through for them, you're not going to be paying attention. So what we didn't figure out was who was going to go first. Do I have a volunteer? I'll go first. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Right? Yeah. All right, thanks, Caity. All right, so Caity Koyczan is a Dene interdisciplinary artist from the Yellowknife Northwest Territories that uses various mediums to communicate how culture and technology can grow together in order for us to develop a better understanding of who we are, where we come from, and what we will be. He creates with whatever tools necessary to bring an idea to fruition and specializes in sculpture, installation, 3D, VR, AR, 360, and audio works such as music, soundscapes, and film score. And I will say that Caity kind of does a lot and does them well. So Caity, you want to take it away?
So as I said, I'm a transplant from the Yellowknife Northwest Territories. I chose Winnipeg as my new home base because it basically feels like a bigger version of Yellowknife. There's way less pretentious people here than some bigger cities in Canada, so really enjoy it. And the people, everyone is really involved. I find that I have the resources that I need in order to do what I want with in this huge city. And I think that judging from the people that I've talked to, that's something that a lot of locals don't really realize, that there's so much more here than maybe what's expected. As well, working within a digital realm, a lot of our work can be just sent to galleries for exhibits and that sort of thing, as well as a really tight-knit hub of artists and like-minded individuals in order to come together to make something amazing happen. As mentioned, I'm an interdisciplinary artist, so I work with a lot of other materials, a lot of earth materials. Dead wood is something that keeps on coming up with in my installations, repurposing and giving it new life, but also amending technology to that to work with things sort of like various Word.
And that microphone isn't working actually.
Really?
Okay, well then
Sound of my voice.
it's deep. I'll pass this along to you. But did you have some presentation stuff that you wanted to include? I think you said some stuff earlier.
Yeah, I sent some videos. I wasn't sure if they were playing or not. Probably just with them. Yeah. Go on. I'll kind of just speak to them really quickly. Check. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so this piece is called Ancestors. I wanted to make something that was a representation of our previous family members and those that maybe watch over us, but in a more badass kind of way. Like there's this stereotype of like, indigenous culture, all our ancestors are like, oh, happy and that sort of thing. But I wanted to represent something where it was like the ancestors that were hard on us, but for a really good reason, right? So I just wanted to create this, which was basically like a basic block cycle figure downloaded from Mixamo, and then the relentless clock simulation process within Blender in order to bring this idea to fruition. This is a piece I created called Beadwork, both with ancestors and beadwork. I was drawing a lot of inspiration from indigenous materials that people use for craft work and that sort of thing. So I wanted to create this figure that was walking through this like star field of beads and implementing the physics of like collision and that sort of thing letter as well, and then using a beadwork card holder for the texture of the person. This is a piece inspired by a band called Rat-a-Tat. But this piece is called Breaking Away. And the song is instrumental. It's an instrumental song, no words, but there's a lot of like emotional sort of like surges that I feel within the song. I wanted to create something that was sort of like this breaking away of like the stresses of life, breaking away from the societal standards, immersing yourself in nature, and sort of breaking away from any sort of like linear thinking, and allowing yourself to just really like let your mind explode, basically. And it's like a seamlessly loopable video that always loops. One thing that I really enjoy about 3D is being able to create mock-ups for installations. So this was a mock-up of my MFA installation from the University of Manitoba. And being able to create a mock-up of this installation kind of informed me of some things that I maybe didn't consider. It's sort of like if you give your art statement to someone else and you kind of like pick it apart and bring up something that maybe you didn't take into consideration before. I found this is a really useful way of sort of maybe catching things that I normally wouldn't. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Casey. And yeah, if you get a chance to see some of Casey's installation work, it's really quite moving. If you can, do it. You won't regret it, I promise. Yeah, so maybe we'll just, just keep going that way.
Yeah.
Does that work? You all right with that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so next we're going to have Caity Curtis. Caity is a storyteller, and quite often she is improvising the stories. Oh, I should say that differently. Quite often she's improvising the stories. In Winnipeg, you might have seen Caity emceeing TEDx Winnipeg, directing the Winnipeg Improv Festival, playing Gracie Allen in vaudeville shows, or in dozens of Winnipeg Fringe Festival shows. Outside of Winnipeg, Caity can sometimes be found touring shows and teaching workshops. Caity began co-producing Pixels, a VR-powered improv show in 2018 with Flipside XR. Caity is also the QA and playtesting lead of Flipside XR, which is an extremely cool job. Is that microphone working?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Then you take it away.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Caity Curtis. I'm a stage performer, so the non-technical part of my work is I'm an improviser. And I started doing that as a child, which is why I wasn't afraid to do it, because it's a scary thing to do, but when you're a kid, you don't know. So I've been an improviser, a theatrical improviser and comedic improviser for decades. And within the last 5 years or so, I also became a VR improviser, or a VR performer, performing with Flipside in their virtual studio, and that's how I started doing VR. So I came to that experience having never put a headset on before, and now a few years later, I'm a comfortable VR performer. I do a show in Flipside. He was like, being like, no.
The microphone is not working.
This microphone is working. It's out these microphones.
It's both working. There you go.
So the technical side of what I do is mounting a stage production. It is often called pixels, and that is where the improvisers are on stage and we use a headset and our controllers as motion capture devices to puppet cartoons, so cartoon avatars, and we do this in front of a live audience where they can see us in our headsets, and they can also see the 2D live animation that we're creating based on audience suggestions. So that's the virtual side of it. And it's so much fun doing that with Flipside that I convinced them to hire me, and now I have a tech job. I'm a tech person. I am a tech guy. I do play testing and QA, which means I get to get other stage performers and all types of performers and put them into a headset and see what kind of things they want to create. And that's how we develop our platform, and it's extremely cool. That is an official part of my bio. It's extremely cool.
And did you have some visuals that you wanted?
I do have some visuals. Yeah, there's can you guys see that, or are we in the way?
We can see it.
So this is this really cool time lapse of us setting up our very first show, which happened in this building downstairs in Platform Gallery, and that's kind of what it looks like. This is before the audience started. We were using Vive headsets back then, so they couldn't go to sleep or the whole show would shut down. So we have to stay on the stage. Somebody has to hold all of the controllers and walk around with them. There's Lux, our CTO, doing that for us. And that's the backdrop. And then I don't know that this actually runs into the show starting, but there's Lux being the most important tech. Yeah, and then maybe there's a picture. You have like a still picture of two performers on stage with an animated background behind them. I mean, you guys have seen cartoons. You know what it is. So maybe that'll pop up. Maybe not. We won't put them on the spot. It's fine. But you can imagine performers standing on the side of the stage, and when I move, my cartoon moves, and it's a very powerful and cool thing for a performer to try out.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're gonna keep going down. And just so you know, there'll be lots of time for questions after. I got a bunch of questions, and I'm a little excited for you. So. But I have a bunch of questions that I can ask too. But I promise that there'll be lots of time for you to ask questions and kind of dig in and do what you need to do. Okay, so we're gonna move down to Taylor. Is that all right? Good. Okay. Taylor McArthur is a digital artist working with 3D animation, video game design, and video. Recipient of the Emerging Digital Artists Award 2022 and the RBC On the Rise Award, Winnipeg Arts Council, also 2022. Congratulations, by the way. Her practice is informed by Indigenous futurisms and seeks to situate her Indigenous culture within both the modern and a potential future vision. Recent exhibitions include Reframe at the In On Out Intermedia Festival, presented by Manufacturing Entertainment. Poolside Gallery, Video Pool Media Art Center. The group exhibition Virtual Wonders, online, New Tech Montreal. Mackenzie Art Gallery, the Art Gallery of Southwestern Manitoba, and the Canadian Roots Exchange. Taylor is busy. These are very busy people. We're lucky to have you all And do you want to take it away? Oh, I guess I'm going to send this to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry, bear with me. It's been a while since I've been on a stage in front of everyone since like 2019. So yeah, a lot of the work that I do is primarily with like 3D animation. So I like to work in Blender a lot, and I kind of use Blender and Unity together. So I really like creating these kind of like immersive, interactive art experiences. And I kind of pull like my inspiration from like different dreams that I have, or I've always been inspired by like nature and sci-fi. And it's been a journey learning all of those. There's been a lot of other software that I've been trying to dip into. So I've learned a little bit of Touch Designer, which I had actually collaborated on something earlier last month with Casey here. So that was something really fun that we had done together. And I think there might be a little visual of that. Kind of pull it. Yeah, so this piece was something that Casey had approached me with. I had total kind of creative freedom with this, and yeah, I was just listening to the audio that Casey had sent me, and we were just experimenting and playing around with Touch Designer, which I have used before briefly, but we had pulled this together really quickly, I think a week before the show. So there was a lot of trial and error on my own, learning how to do this, but it was something that I was really excited to be a part of and learn. It was just a really fun experience up there. Yeah, there's a few other different visuals, and I had just plugged things in and out, just kind of change it. Maybe I focused on the music. That's enough for that one. Kind of just goes on. This piece is one of actually my first pieces that I ever created inside Blender here. And this was part of the Insight exhibition, which was in Brandon, Manitoba. So for this, I kind of had a theme of wanting to explore different kind of stories. So I had approached this in a way that, like, you know, if space travel ever became available, what would happen, like traveling to somewhere new, and there'd be different stories based on like kind of the constellations that are there. I don't know if there's anything else along the panel. Yeah, this was just a visual of an abstract piece that I had created in Blender. I just experiment, kind of play around with different pieces in there. This was another one that I had done here at Video Pool, and it was a collaboration between Dallas Flepesh and I. And then this was another piece I had done with the Mackenzie Art Gallery, and it was like an interactive kind of walking simulator experience based on memories. So there's 3 different memories I had picked out that were very important to me in my point in life.
Thank you. This is functioning, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good. There we go. Thank you, Taylor. That's great. Do you want this one that hasn't been hasn't been passed around? It's on the floor though. Okay. Thanks so much for that, Taylor. So next we're going to go to Freya Olafson, right here next to me. Freya is an intermedia artist who works with video, audio, animation, motion capture, XR, painting, and performance. Their practice engages with identity and the body, as informed by technology and the internet. Olafson's work has been exhibited and performed internationally. I'm not even going to go through all of these because there's about 8 trillion of them. But suffice to say, a lot of places, in all of them. In spring 2020, Olafson was one of the longlist Soviet Art Award recipients through a nomination by the Media Art Center. And in July 2021, their work, Motion After Effect, was selected for the Lumen Prize for Art and Technology, long list. Olafson holds an MFA in New Media from the Transart Institute, Delano University. Is that close? In 2017, Olafson joined York University as an assistant professor in screen dance. As of July 2021, Olafson is an assistant professor in digital media at the University of Manitoba School of Art. And we're very happy to have Freya back here with us in Manitoba. I'm going to take you away.
Thank you. Very glad to be here today with colleagues whose work I've been paying attention to and excited by, and I'm grateful who's been a support in my career over the years. Yeah, so we can play the first video right away and I'll speak at the same time. Oh, the first one would be, yeah, that one. So the clip I'm going to show in the background is
VR for getting theaters and performing in worlds.
So this is from 2019, the last live performance and larger work that I did, which was a 60-minute performance, which was the piece that was longlisted for the Lumen Prize for Art and Technology. And I guess when I started that work, I had thought I was going to do a piece using 360 video on stage and decentralizing where the projections were. And I went to a residency in Portland, AR, VR residency, and learned about motion capture and Unity, and the whole path changed in what I was doing. So through a number of years, from 2016 till this piece, 2019, I also had an opportunity to do a residency in San Francisco, which also opened me up broader to some of the concerns in the XR community. And so this work was looking at the impact of the related tech around the XR movement, and as it became more consumer available. So I was working with found footage of people doing motion capture tests, monologues of people describing what they were seeing in VR, alongside monologues of people using analog tools for expanding reality. So things like psychedelic mushroom trips and them describing them on YouTube, or out-of-body experiences and astral projection techniques. So thinking about ways to expand our understanding of reality, our physical body, presence, space, time, these big terms. And Hendrix created sounds for this work, which I turned it down with awful. Yeah, so then, and then looking at I've often been, because my mode of learning about new tech is, and most projects I'm learning some kind of new skill, has been about tutorials. Sometimes I use the mode of tutorials, and there's some playful, funny ones with physics, certainly, and bodies online. Maybe we can put the sound up just for this tail end of it, and I'll speak over the next piece after.
Paintings. I'm looking at a painting inside of a video game, which is in itself a painting.
We can go on to the next clip. This is a newer work that's not finished, but I've been in the same studio, live workspace, which is very close to here, thankfully, for Video Pool, because I'm always needing tech resources. Been in that same space for 16 years and thinking about transition. So as part of that, I've been using some of the tools of LiDAR scanning for sort of documenting and archiving this space for myself. And in particular, this was for Jazz Winnipeg. I used the Unity environment I had made to respond to a piece of music by Ray Hamilton, local musician. And the full clip, I think, is visible for this month on Jazz Winnipeg on their YouTube account. But I've also been playing with Unity to make still images and make prints. So there are also some galleries and festivals that are looking for game-initiated video stills. That's my dad, yeah. And then, so I'm still figuring out where this work goes next, whether, in this case, it's I guess you would say a machinima video, but whether it becomes a playable environment that's hosted online, whether that aspect of navigating or guiding a viewer's experience is new for me in a way separate from a stage and through 3D space. So I have a lot of questions with that, and we'll see where the research leads. Hopefully the next clip, if there is one. There should be one more video. Oh, it would be Emma Lazarus. Yeah. And this is just last one. I'll just nod to. Since 2016, I've had the chance to collaborate with Will Pappenheimer, who's a professor at Pace University. He was one of the members of the original Manifest AR Collective, which did an interventionist exhibition at MoMA in 2011. Which was quite early on. They placed their virtual sculptures in between an existing exhibition, flyered to their friends and said, come, without telling MoMA. So they've also made a really beautiful manifesto around the potentials, interventionist potentials of AR. And this work in particular was up in Munich and was organized by XR Ensemble there because 95 of the public statues and monuments in Munich depict men. And so this initiative juxtaposed 31 augmented reality works of gender diverse figures alongside statues of men across the city. So that's just a little snapshot. And Will and I have been at Send Motion Capture Files, we've been doing things since we met at that residency in Koyczan. So there's a little snapshot on some of the approaches and lessons. Wow.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, okay, I don't know where to start. But maybe I will, I kind of have this is more of a general question. Maybe this is a good way to jump into it, and this is sort of for everybody. But I was thinking about, so when I first moved to Manitoba, I remember I decided to walk into work on my first day, and so I just came down Portage to come down to the exchange. And I got here, and you know, I was talking to people, and they said, how'd you get here? So I walked down Portage, and then they said, you'll find your own route. You'll find something that works for you. And so I wonder if you could each speak to whether or not you've found your route to your creativity. You know, if you're in a comfortable place, or if you have things that you fall back on to create your work, or if it's I know Caity, I know you do a lot of improv, so maybe just like that's what you fall back on. But I'm curious about whether you have that. Is this some sort of technologies or some processes that you fall back on as artists, or is it kind of something new every time? I'll pass this on. Whoever wants to start.
I will start. Yes, so as an improviser, before I was doing anything in VR, I feel like I was doing much more intentional work, and my practice had honestly a lot more meaning, and it was better than the work I'm doing in VR. Not to bash what I'm doing in VR, but I've had to take a step away from my storytelling, maybe the quality of the product, because I'm so focused on this new process, which is not bad. And it sounds sad. It's not sad, it's good. But I fall back, when I'm doing the VR show, I can always fall back on taking off my headset and looking at the people in the room, which is what I have to do as an improviser. And I think I'm still in a struggling place of figuring out how to do both. How to show them something really cool. Really cool. Everybody's like, this is so cool. Yeah. But did it matter? Was it just cool? So there's got to be more from my earlier practice of just the stage, the audience, and that relationship. And I'm trying to fall back on that while I integrate more tech. Yeah, that's my answer.
That's great, thank you. Does anyone else want to jump up? You don't have to. I got lots of questions.
Yeah, so fear, that's the main motivator. I don't know, I love it. And it's a joke, but like at the same time, you know, if you have a project that's coming up with a deadline, it's like, okay, yeah, get this done, you start thinking about this. But I allow myself to be inspired by anything and everything. In showing some of my work, you know, there's like the traditional materials, so like, you know, culture, inspiration, song names from bands, like the emotions that I can feel, transmitting that into something. And I find that I'm never really in my comfort zone as like a fallback, but I use that as like a motivational sort of factor in order to, you know, like satisfy that thirst for knowledge or that quest to like always learn something new, that sort of thing. Like the installation of the video pool, for instance, that was a huge learning curve. And then with my MFA, working with these LiDAR scanners and the programming aspect of it and the whole installation setup. I found like within the digital realm, working in Blender has been really satisfying for me and learning more about that, being completely self-taught. Thank you, YouTube and forums, providing this knowledge to share. So that's kind of like where I'm at. There's no real like fallback. It's just like falling back into something.
Right. I remember you saying something about that when you were installing MacBooks. I think I asked you something similar, and you were like, "Oh no, I'm never comfortable." Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. I'm pretty much the same thing as Casey there. I'm never really comfortable with what I'm kind of doing. I'm always nervous, kind of about the next stage here. And the past couple of years, it's never really been kind of like stable. So it's always been like these little contracts or projects. And then I'm learning something new.
It's a sad time.
You got a soundtrack.
Yeah, I'm always learning some kind of new skill or something that I can like take away from each one of these projects. There have been times where it has been pretty quiet. It has terrified me because then I'm like, I need to pay my rent, I need to pay my bills, and like I need some kind of income here. It's a little frightening, but then after a while, something usually ends up coming through without me having to actually seek it out. And I think it kind of comes from sharing a lot of stuff online. So I share a lot of my artwork on Instagram, which seems to be a really good help, along with having some really good friends and colleagues here too that are very supportive.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. I also, I remember having a conversation with you one point where you were excited about you were just exploring some new technology and you didn't really know what you were going to do with it, but you were like, yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. Freya, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess the driver has always sometimes been because of my background initially in performance and movement and dance, mediated kind of like finding a fancy turn and some leg kicks weren't meaningful enough for me. I was trying to figure out like what do I want to say with movement, and so mediation through the technology has always been kind of a driver. That's changing now with digital representations of myself, having made a little avatar. So that's a different kind of mediation. It's very external. But taking on puzzles, the technical puzzles, and not knowing where it's going to be, as well as iterating. So having a project that I've shown one way, try in another, bring it maybe online, so I've often tried to kind of return to ideas and try them in different formats because I learn both how the ideas are communicating, but also how the mediums or the form of communication with the viewer makes connections. And then tools-wise, one that's kind of stayed constant because I've been working on stages is Isadora, node-based programming environment. And so we've been finding ways to interface that with other tools as well. Not to Isadora.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Thanks. We're done at 2:30 or what?
Yeah, I'm going to be.
2:30.
We still have some time.
Yeah. Okay. No, just checking. I want to make sure that there's some time in case people have some questions and stuff too. But that kind of that makes me think about one of the other questions that I had been thinking about. So in, I think it was published in 2000, there was a paper by Kim Cascone called The Aesthetics of Failure. And it was sort of about the use of digital glitches and systemic failure in digital technologies. And Kim Cascone is a sound artist, and so there was sort of spawned a lot of work that looked at the failure of the technology and how to creatively use that. And I know that since all of you are using technologies, and I know, for example, like with Pixels, I know that there's you're just kind of there, and sometimes stuff just doesn't work, and you got to work with it, right? And I remember watching you perform and kind of thinking how nerve-wracking it must be not knowing where that's going to happen. But I'm curious if that sort of aesthetic of failure, if that or how that influences your work, or how it might sort of change the direction of work that you're making. You have a goal of this is what I'm going to make, and then along the way it doesn't kind of work out that way because the technology. Something else happens and you go, ooh, that's nice. Anyway, do each of you, would you like to just speak on that a little bit, if whether that has an influence or not in your practice? Does anybody want to start? Otherwise, I can just choose someone.
Working alongside improvisation, in physical practice, it's very much something that has to happen, where I found this necessary in working with tech. And I'm just thinking to having read this last year, Glitch Feminism by Legacy Russell, who talks to the power of glitch in marginalized identities, and to destabilize binary thinking, to destabilize understandings of self. And anyhow, all to say that there's this painting trail effect that was an accident. I was trying to do green screen well, and I've been kind of exploiting and working with that since 2016. At one point, maybe it won't work. It was just some copied code that didn't come with the intended effect. And it was one of the more delightful things that has influenced the work and kind of continued. That's just a small comment. I'm sure I have more to say, but let's just let it be there. Improvisation and responsiveness. Also, I'm excited by the potential, and it doesn't do what you want. And it produces something else. That's what it is exciting. It doesn't do what you want, that's a little frustrating. But when it produces something else unexpected, that's exciting.
Right, I remember you sort of talking about some of that where it's just felt like those happy accidents where, it's not doing what you want, but you look at it and think, oh, hey, that works for something. I don't know what yet. You want to?
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer that success is a byproduct of failure. For every one success, there's going to be numerous failures in which you accomplish a goal or to move towards something that brings your idea to fruition. Another sort of like offshoot of that is something Taylor said, just putting your stuff out there, and the value of risk taking. I think as artists, it's really important for us to take these risks, to kind of like put ourselves out there, to detach ego, and just to put your work out there just for the sake of its creation. And that's how a lot of opportunities come to life, is just putting your stuff out there for people to look at and see, and then, you know, next thing you know, you're getting emails in your inbox inviting you to take on some really, really cool opportunities. And then to kind of like nod towards what Freya mentioned, these like unexpected sort of results through failure, and just trying things. Like within the digital world, there is always going to be Control Z or Command Z. We can almost always undo something. Control S first, but then you're able to
Alt F4.
So, like, why not? You know, why not just like take that leap? Why not just try something? You know, dedicate 5 minutes to trying this thing that you've never tried before, because you never really know what's going to work out really well for you. You know, and what can also sort of like spawn this new kind of process that you can implement into your workflow. So failure is huge. I love it. I love failing. You know, because it just brings up all this other these things that are just really good for you. It also keeps you human and keeps you in check. Man, no one is perfect. Okay, like no one knows everything. There's always going to be these walls that you come up across and these obstacles in your way. But just try.
That's great. Thank you. Katie, you ready? You look like you're ready to jump on this one.
Yeah. I love that the audience is shouting hotkeys. Yeah, I can say a lot about this topic. As improvisers, we train constantly to be comfortable in uncertainty. We have an extremely high tolerance for the unknown because we step out every night and do not know what is going to emerge during the show. And that is amplified when we're using software that's in a beta stage. After the first run of Pixels, Lux, the developer of the software we're using, he was like, "Hey, you know what? We're gonna do it next time, but we fixed this bug." And my genuine reaction was disappointment. Because those bugs, and they were bugs where like one of the characters would freeze. And the audience sees that happen, and now we get to justify that, and it becomes a big game. Every bug is an opportunity for a game with the audience, and we would make that very much part of the show. The seams are going to show. This is not going to be polished, so we tell the audience, and we like make it fun. Like, this might not work. It's never worked before, and we make that a part of it. During our very first run, we had technical failure to the point where one of the devs had to come out on stage and like, I don't know, plug something in there. I don't know what they do. And our backup plan was, well, if the tech goes down, we'll just do a regular show. And this was probably, it was so bizarre because I go out and I start doing a monologue, and it's a fine monologue. Like, I'm pretty good at monologues, and I realize nobody is watching me. They are all watching. It was Lex with the computer. It's like when the roadie gets a round of applause for replacing a guitar. Like, it's interesting, and it's that really the lesson that what we're doing in our show is process over product, and you could argue that all improv is process over product. The audience wants to watch you struggle and figure it out and do it. The scenes are good, the stories are good, it's funny, it's great, but how it is created is just as, if not more, interesting. How we solve our bug challenges in front of an audience makes them part of it, and it's the most exhilarating part of the show, and it's forcing us to be way better improvisers. So yeah, it's failure, but if it didn't happen, it would some magic and uncertainty would be lost, and that's almost sad. But also, I'm a QA person, so I'm supposed to fix the bugs. There's so many I haven't reported because they make the show better.
Yeah, you know, I think that it's one of the things being an audience member of your show is that there's kind of you're waiting for something because you know you're excited about like what are you gonna do? What are they gonna do when this happens or if this happens? So that makes it does make the show really exciting. Taylor, do you want to add anything to that? You want to jump in?
Sure. I think for me, I'd say sometimes I say yes to different projects where I don't really, I'll say like I haven't really done it before, so it's a challenge in myself in learning to kind of navigate around and being able to like problem solve. So I've had these ideas of like something grand that I really wanted to create, and then I run into all these different problems because can't figure out how to fix them. So mainly like self-taught inside Blender and Unity, so it's a lot of like troubleshooting, kind of figure out that way, or like messaging other friends who kind of work within the same field and trying to fix that. And with one of them being the show that Dallas and I worked on last year together, like Video Pool. So Dallas did most of the back end stuff, and I had done more of the visuals. But then Dallas was actually living up in Fox Lake, so he wasn't able to come down here. And there was something going wrong where it like kept kicking the user out, and we couldn't figure out why this kept happening. And it was really hard because like I'm trying to figure this out, even though I don't really do a lot of the back end stuff. But somehow I ended up figuring that piece out. I think like the night before it actually had opened up, but it was just kind of very stressful and overwhelming. But sometimes it seems to like figure itself out. Yeah, it kind of worked out that way. So I think.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a really valuable role that artists and plays. Is to provide that space to explore new ideas, and sometimes they come up against your wall where you're like, because I remember kind of talking to you and saying, well, I don't know how to fix this, so can you? Oh, sure, I'll try. But that makes me, and then I promise that we'll go to questions, but it makes me think about, like it kind of leads nicely into something else that I was thinking about. Like, we all know there's sort of this implosion at Twitter, and so, people are kind of trying new platforms and things. And so I was thinking, I went and I opened a Mastodon account, and I was thinking about how, that I got pleasure out of being on Twitter and kind of like fighting against the algorithm, where it's like feeding me stuff and so I can block things. And it was kind of like, it was exciting to kind of like, I know that this algorithm is trying to do certain things, and so I'm going to try to I'm going to try and trick it somehow. And so that makes me think about like, is there, does your process benefit sometimes from the software or the algorithms that you're having to work with and the constraints of the systems that you have to work with? Like, do you find benefit that comes from that? Where like Taylor, you're talking about those challenges where you don't know the software or certain parts of it. So, but you go for it anyway. And so, does it working within those constraints? Does that help with your creative practice, with your flow, with your?
I'd say yes, it definitely does. There's been a lot of like nights where I'm just sitting at the computer, kind of freaking out, trying to figure out how to kind of fix whatever problem that I have, and I have to like kind of step away for like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe even a day or two, and kind of come back at it with some, fresh eyes where I can see my mistakes that I had overlooked, prior before. So that's like the main part of it for me that kind of drives me in that sense. And then I like too, like being able to problem solve on my own too. It's really nice because I can kind of take what I've learned from that problem and I can apply it to whatever next problem I have. It seems to kind of just stick in my mind and I can figure it it out. So yeah.
Does anybody else want to talk about that? Because I feel pretty certain that you'll have lots to say about that. I'd love to hear from you about that. We can also move on if you're like, I don't know.
Like so fast. The constraints are important, and it forces me to be a better improviser again. Like when you're a baby improviser, you're told like, don't be funny, don't try to be clever, and stop out thinking what you're doing. Do what is obvious and possible at the moment, and there's a lot of great things that are obvious and possible, but we're always trying to be too clever. So I do think that thinking inside the box, when the box is already really cool, is enough, and it certainly has helped put some guardrails on what it is I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And Casey and Freya, like I know you both kind of touched on it already, but I'd be super excited to hear a bit more from you.
Well, I think each form of technology or software has its own specialty. You know, like they all have their own sort of like confined things that they're good at, and some things that they just can't do, right? So that kind of informs like how your process works within them. The two that come to mind for me is like Maximus P and Touch Designer. I had a hell of a time in Max, and I still do. It's like, I don't know why, I just, you know, Andy tries to explain some things to me, it's like, but I find like within Touch Designer, it's more, I think of Winamp. Y'all remember Winamp? And I'm saying y'all, I just go back to that, it's not too long. Y'all know Winamp. But it's like, it's programmed really well. So I found like working in Touch Designer, you get these like really immediate results. Whereas in Max, there's a lot more like coding or like processing that needs to happen. So in that regard, I find like if I had to choose between the two, that Touch Designer for me would be the way to go. Mostly because like using Xbox Connect cameras for, let's say, the installation for new launch, they already have like a box, a drop-in box for a Connect camera. You can just drop it into the interface and use it. The whole right click to move the screen around just like messed with my head so much. So if you're a software developer, like keep some things the same, you know, like going around the screen with the left click. Left click, that's the way to go if you're right-handed. But that's still, maybe that gets to you too, but yeah, I kind of like swear sometimes when using touches like, why? I digress.
I guess speaking of algorithms, and it made me think back to my earlier beginnings of working with tech. I was researching a lot of content online through YouTube, and how the search engine would work was very different to find, videos where only one person watched them. Looking for kind of your content that was a very specific interest, and yeah, that's just gone. So it's very difficult now. I find that. Well, I'm not with every work, and I'm working with found footage, which has lots of ethical concerns and things to think through when remixing. But certainly that has adapted and shifted and changed the work that I'm doing. But then I think to software, and I think the earlier pieces like the first way I figured out how to mount live video from my webcam onto a cube was with Quartz Composer, which then went by the wayside. And when I was doing it, I was like, I didn't know anybody in Winnipeg using Quartz Composer. So it was a little bit of tutorials online, but very little. And so there's way more tutorials and forums and content now for, say, exploring Unity and Blender. But at the same time, leading up to my show with a motion after effect, I was working on particular problems and trying 15-minute tutorial here and 18-minute tutorial here, and not achieving the small thing of like having this avatar emerge 5 minutes into the scene. And then I struggled for weeks, and then I was like, Adrian Cheater said, if you need help, give me a call, and then solved it in a minute. And so the flow. Sometimes you get really stilted with this desire to learn and grow and understand the software, because it affects then how you make. or it affects your understanding of what you could make and how it can communicate. But there is some challenges that are just, you can't take them all on. So I do see the potential of both, that these are collaborative modalities, which I haven't been using as much as I think some of the softwares obviously require and are asked for in terms of specialized knowledge in different areas. And then the fact that it's just updating all the time. There's another thing, like you look at a tutorial and then it's irrelevant now, so it's hard. One with that, it's hard.
Well, that's great. That's super. Thank you, everybody. Is there any questions that anybody has out there, or comments, or anything you want to talk about? Yeah, I see some. Do we have a microphone that can go in there, or you can yell? I think there was some in the back over here.
Hi. So I guess tech and art coming together is definitely magic, but the process of moving the tech into the art can sometimes lose the magic. Like if I'm doing something with a pencil, the pathway from my idea to realization is pretty straightforward. I'm just using the pencil. There's nothing blocking me. But with tech, and especially trying to integrate new techs that you maybe just encountered with, you're suddenly like you're in the zone, and then blah, ones and zeros, and you're off the rails. And like, how do you keep the magic in the making part?
That's a great question. Does anybody want to tackle that one?
I guess I remember I was working with a student a couple weeks ago, and he was apologizing for trying to have me help solve a problem. And I was like, no, this is it. This is the puzzle. It's like, how is it working? Why isn't it working? Wanting to try and keep a curiosity or a sense of understanding or relating to the machine or the system that it is. I don't know. So finding some sort of guide of curiosity and play and desire to understand the puzzle, which ebbs and flows. And so I think that's sometimes I think he said like step away for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I was like 5 days, 10 days. But anyway, it's the small.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, I feel like probably a lot of what happens, or maybe what people sometimes forget, is that collaboration is it's pretty huge. You don't have to know everything. There's lots of definitely lots of really smart folks that know things that that you might not. And it's something that excites me, but like something like with this panel where I think there's all these people that are developing all the software and making all this amazing stuff, and there's all these artists doing these other things that are sort of utilizing all that software and all that knowledge, and getting those two together. Just that's kind of some of that magic happens. Is there another question? There's one over here in the middle.
Yeah, I'm just loud. Hey, I come at this from new to tech, and I'm an actor. But for everyone, like, at what point did you make tech part of your art, and was cost a factor? Or if like there was specific tech that like got you into tech training?
So ever since I was a kid, like sci-fi and tech is something that I've just been, really fascinated with, especially with growing up with like the Alien and Predator films. It's always been like, oh yeah, there's definitely other things out there. The universe is. But I'm an advocate for accessibility, and so free software out there is amazing. And that's why I'm also a big fan of Blender. I don't know if anyone's seen the video with the founder and CEO, but just stating that it's free and that it always will be free, in order to kind of like move everything forward, right? And then when Gravity Sketch first came out in VR, it was like a subscription-based service. But then it moved into just a free product. And I was so glad that happened because my workflow now between Graphic Sketch and then into Blender and then hopefully now into Unreal after watching the last demo is going to be a lot more streamlined. But there's still a lot of things out there that are quite cost effective, like a VR headset alone, right? Like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you need to have a high-powered gaming laptop in order to plug this in. But now with the drop of the Quest 2, it's significantly dropped down that price point. So you see a lot more people getting into it, a lot more events and conferences like this, where we have like a plethora of VR headsets within an environment and enabling people to see it. So it's definitely like accessibility is on the rise. I think like the cost effectiveness of technology, it's always going to be something. Like it's always evolving every year. Out with the old and nucleus, and you know it's always going to be something there. But there's always going to be really cheap or free software and hardware that opens up that accessibility factor. But grant writing, that's something like a lot of people don't know. The Canada Council of the Arts has like a $3,000 small scale budget grant where you can buy equipment with that money. So you got your MacBook Pro that you can buy, or a gaming laptop or desktop in addition to a headset or any other sort of hardware. So just putting that out there.
I'm just going to quickly jump in too, just to say the organization that I run also is a really great resource. If you're, we have all kinds of equipment, software, hardware, you name it, and we exist. We're kind of there, so that artists can come in without having to drop a bunch of money on a bunch of gear that you're not sure if you're going to use. That's kind of what we're there for. So, does anyone else want to talk about that?
If you wanted to try performing in VR, you could just email me and we could talk. It's hard as a non-technical person. It's very intimidating. It's expensive to dabble, which is why resources where you can try out equipment is important. I was very lucky in that we got a grant for our first project from the Winnipeg Arts Council, who trusted us as stage performers and said, "Sure, go do something with the headset on." So it's about having relationships in both sides, in the theater side and the tech side, which takes some time to cultivate, but there's a lot of enthusiasm on both sides. While it's daunting, it's doable.
I know that we're a little bit over time, so I guess we should probably wrap it up. But do we do a couple more questions? Or?
One more question.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, that'd be great.
Thanks so much for your time today. Question about kind of these, so speaking of tech and art intersection, thing that just popped into, I think, monology myosphere, is these text to image generating AI programs that just seem absolutely fascinating. Have you guys played around with that idea, explored it at all, or does it excite you in any way, shape, or form? Thoughts on it?
AI scares the hell out of me. So
yeah.
I played with it a little bit just because the platforms are there, seeing what it generates. I'm working on a collaboration with an artist who's based in the UK, Luke Nicol, who helped found the Cluster Festival here, a composer, who's been working with AI and audio. So we'll be doing some recordings and training a model off our voices coming up, based off a text that was generated with AI as well. And then the image generation, although we've done so far, has just been, kind of mashing a few worlds together. Like Luke works with No Limits, like a virtual roller coaster simulation program that he worked with as a child or teenager, and is still relevant. So he's using that for controlling music samples. And but the image generation, I've just been thinking, going like, wow, this opens up so many things for School of Art and learning teaching for how people are critically engaging with these tools, and then how do you evaluate the output and the collaboration and because the process to a certain extent isn't invisible unless you're seeing the prompts that people are putting in and how they've developed their articulation and their ideas around in what ways they're working with the tool. But yeah, there's a lot to think about there. I just feel like I'm just kind of like just trailing along with the conversation a little bit through Twitter and various colleagues. But yeah, there's lots to think about there. And then the video AI generators and 3D models and wow. And yeah, there's lots. Motion capture with AI too. Like some of those tools. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredibly cool. And overwhelmingly cool. There's a beautiful narrative tool that we use on stage, which is just called scene painting, where I would ask you to imagine something, and I'd say, there's a tree, and there's a swing hanging on the tree. And when I say that, all of you picture that, and you see what you need and want to see in that moment, which is powerful. But if I say it, and now there's an image of it, I don't know if it's better or worse, but it's extremely cool, and there's a lot to explore there as a storyteller. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, well, I think, we should probably wrap this up. I feel like, I mean, I could probably just talk to you all for days. But I want to thank Hyper Winnipeg for putting this on and inviting us all here, and all the work and the effort to put this together, because it's really exciting that this is happening here in Winnipeg. So I'm very, very glad to be a part of it. And I want to thank all of you for all of your technology. I want to thank you for all of your time and your effort and your artwork, and for spending your afternoon up here, sharing with everybody all of your thoughts and ideas, and then thanking all of you for coming out and having questions and listening attentively, and appreciate it.